All right, hello and welcome to chapter 5. We are just going to keep making little building blocks, right, that allow us to build more and more complex programs. And in this chapter, we're going to do something called methods. And so we're just building on what we've learned. So far, we did variables like strings and ints and doubles. Then we did if statements. Last chapter, we did loops on for and while loops. And then this chapter again will be methods. All right, so in this video, I'm going to be coding some stuff, kind of some examples. You probably don't necessarily need to code along with me. You might want to have a notebook out and record a few notes and stuff. But in general, you'll get to coding them more later on. For now, it's just trying to understand methods, right, and just the basics of it. So we'll start with a definition of method. So you can see this is the Mr. Westphal made-up definition here. It's just a piece of code that performs a specific task. And so one of the real challenges of this, or the bigger picture of this, is when you write a computer program, you don't want to write one giant main method, right? We do that main method. We don't want all of our code in there because it'd be like thousands of lines long, right? If you get something really big like a video game, and it would be hard to figure out what code does, like what part of the code does each task. So if we can break the code into tiny little pieces, little tasks, then we can code each task, and then it's easier to change it. It's easier to find, like, you know, if there's a problem with when the guy moves left, if we have a little method that's called move left, we can go there and fix that method. To try and give you an example of this, this is the battleship game that I wrote, One Day Camping. I wrote this in like one day. Oops, that's not what I want to do. Let's see. Oh, I gotta make the other thing run. Sorry, I'm gonna run it here. So here's this little battleship, right, where you kind of try to guess where the ships are or whatever. Anyways, if you look at some of that code, there's a bunch of little methods. In fact, they're not that little, but I probably should break it down even more. But anyways, I have one that checks for victory to see if either person has won the game, right? That's one of my methods. I have a computer move. That's a method right here. Let's see what else I got. Directional move. I'm not sure what that means. I probably should have named it something better than that. If it's an untested spot on the board, it'll determine if it's untested or not. Here we'll select a random location. So this probably for placing the ships. It places them randomly. Here's a player moving. Here's the process of a move by one of the players. We can check for if a ship is sunk. So the idea is that you have lots of tiny little pieces that make up a bigger program. And learning to program that way is really important because as you write more complex programs, you don't want all the code in one main method. You want to break it all apart and have each method do one little task. The smaller the task, the better almost. Mine methods are kind of getting a little bit long here. I probably could have tried to break them up a little bit more. Anyways, all right, so let's get back and do maybe some more simple examples. So I'm just going to do file with method notes. And basically, we have our main method, right, which is where our code runs. So what we're going to actually do is we're going to go outside of this curly brace, and we're going to make a new method. And so it's going to start a lot like this: public, static, void, and then this is the name of the method. So I'm going to call this method insult because I'm going to use it to insult people. So basically, this is the name of it, and then we'll talk about what these curly braces mean, or these parenthesis braces mean, in a little bit. But basically, then you can have a bunch of code run in here. So we can do an insult like the students last year told me to say hello, boomer, because that means they're an old person or something. I don't know. Anyways, that's going to be my insult. I'll use one from Monty Python here. So actually, let's just do that. Let's just do one line for now. So anyways, the idea is if I want this code to run, right, if I hit main right now, or sorry, hit run, it runs the main, which has nothing in it. So I can run it, but nothing's happening. Okay, so if I want to make this code down here run, I'm going to call the name of the method, which I called it insult. Right, you can name your methods just like your variables, name them whatever you want. So I'm going to do insult, okay, And then once I call that, when I do my code, it will jump down and run that line of code. Okay. And so the idea is anytime I want to do an insult, we could do this. We could say something like, welcome to my program. And I could do an insult, and then I could ask them, how are you? Okay. So basically, this code would run this first line here, print it out, jump down, run any of the code in insult, and then print out the how are you. You can see what gets printed there. And you can have multiple lines, right, in your method. You can have a bunch of lines in here. So maybe I'll add another insult from Monty Python quick. Your mother was a hamster. If you've ever seen Monty Python. Okay. So maybe this would be a good time to pause the video and see if you can guess what would be printed out by this code. Okay, so it's going to do welcome to my program, then it's going to run these two lines, and then finally how are you at the end. So it should look like that with the insult in between the other two prints. Okay, so that's a basic method. I'm going to take out these other lines here and just going to do the basic method of insult. And again, you can run it multiple times. So if I do this, that'll just make that insult run twice. All right, so it just runs the same code twice, which it seems weird, but that's actually one of the points of a method is if you have a task that you want to do over and over again, you can make a method to do that. So I have an example from a student from a previous year. So this is from a student, Carson Tabernash, 2017. And basically, he got tired of typing out system.out.println. So what he did is he made a little method called SOP, right? And then anytime he wanted to do a system out print, he could just call his SOP method. All right, and this actually has kind of the code that we're going to do next here, which is you can have pass in information to a method. So in this SOP example, we're not system out printing the same thing each time. So we're going to pass in a variable so that it prints out whatever this string is each time. So you can call this little SOP method with and pass in a string. That's what is being shown up here in main. Right? We're calling SOP by passing in a different string so that it prints out something different each time. Okay, so we end up doing system out print 4 times with 4 different strings, basically meaning we're going to print out different information. Okay, so back in our code, we're going to do that same thing, but now we're going to do like insult person. So I'm going to make a new method. I'm going to do the same thing. It's going to look exactly like this heading, public, static, void. And don't worry too much about those words yet. We're going to do insult person. And then I'm going to say string coming in. So I'm making a string variable called person. Okay, so basically who I'm insulting is a variable that's stored in this string called person. All right, so in my print here, I'm going to use that variable. So I'm going to say person string plus is about as smart as Westbrook. That's about the most insulting thing I can think of. Okay, so basically, whatever string gets passed in here, or whatever variable gets passed in here, that string, whatever value it has, will take on, will get put here, and then append to it that statement is about as smart as Westbrook. So back here in main, when we use insult person, okay, so if I just type it like I did before, it's going to complain, and the reason is you have to pass in. This is called like an input variable or parameter, and you have to pass in a string. So I can't pass in like 35 because that's an int. So I need to pass in a string like the person I want to insult. So of course I want to insult Paris. All right. I don't know who else we want to insult. How about Mr. Cousins? So we'll go Kirk Cousins. He's an easy target. Okay, so I'm going to hit save, and then so when I run this, it'll insult Paris and then Kirk. You can see the power of this, right? If I want to insult all my students, I can do it very quickly, right? I can just keep passing in, if I want to yell at Kyle, and I don't even know who else, Tyson. Well, Tyson. So if I want to insult, I can insult my students quickly with my little method here. I just pass in their name, and I can call the method as many times as I need to insult as many students as I need. Okay, so we're slowly going to get more complex here. All right, so what's up next is we're going to make a method that both takes in numbers and returns. So it's kind of like called like input and output. So if you think of a function in math class, usually it's like y equals 5x plus 3 or something. So x is called like the input and y is called the output. You have the same kind of idea with a function in computer science. Is you can input variables like this, and then you can also have it returned. Okay, so basically I'm going to do another method down here. So I'm going to call this one, and we're just going to do something really simple like sum two numbers. I'm going to call public static, and then instead of void, I'm going to type the type of variable that is returned. So void means nothing is returned. So these two methods right here actually had nothing returned. So I'm going to do, this time I'm going to do an int, all right, because I'm going to return an int value, and I'm going to type add, and I'm going to do two inputs. So I'm going to do int this time, like int a, comma, and then int b. So basically what this method is saying is I'm going to take in two integer values and call them a and b. Okay, and then I'm going to return an int. Right, so this int right here means that's what you're returning. Okay, so all I'm going to do is find the sum. So I'm going to make a new variable called sum, and that's going to be a plus b. All right, and then I'm just going to type return that sum. Okay, and you may remember this from CodingBat, right? When we were doing CodingBat, we were actually doing little methods, right? So at the end, we just return it. And this sum type has to match whatever I type here. So in this case, I'm returning an int, and I returning specifically the int sum. So these match. Int is a sum, and I have a return type of an int right here. Okay, so to call this method, I'm going to use the name of it, so add, and then here I'm going to need two ints, so maybe just 5 and 6. Okay, and so what's different here is now that it returns something, I'm basically going to store that. Okay, so this is where I think students get a little bit confused by this, but I'm going to make a new int called result. Okay, and I'm going to set that equal to, so like normally we just set a number here, like set result equal to 7 or something like that. But we're going to set it equal to whatever is returned by our add method. So since add returns an int, boom, it's going to store it right there. Okay, and then I can do whatever I want with result. So maybe I'll just system out print the result of adding those two together. Okay, so when this runs, you can see at the end here, it's going to print out an 11. Okay, and I know this gets a little strange, but you can actually call inside of here. So instead of result right here, you can actually call like add 5, 6 right there, and then you don't even need this line. And so this will just print out whatever is returned by this call to add. So it's kind of saving a little bit of space, but it'll start on the inside, call add, get 11, and then print it out after. Okay, and when you're first learning, I like to do it the other way. I like to do it one step at a time, just print it out like that. So, you know, get the result first, then print it out in this line, just so it's not as confusing when you're first learning. All right, so that's a summary of methods, and we create them outside of main, right? Main is its own method, and then we close main, and then we have an open and close for our new method. This example was called add. All right, hopefully that helps. As always, reach out if you have questions, because it just starts to get more complex. Thank you for watching.